There is something you have carried for as long as you can remember. Not a belief, not a philosophy, not something you were taught. A feeling. The feeling that you do not entirely belong here, that the world moves at a frequency slightly different from your own, that ordinary explanations for why you are the way you are, your personality, your lineage, your upbringing, never quite reach the deepest layer of the question. You have likely tried to explain it away, told yourself it was sensitivity, introversion, a difficult childhood, a creative mind constructing meaning where there is none. But the feeling does not leave. It surfaces in unexpected places, in the silence between conversations, in the moment before sleep when the architecture of daily life dissolves and something older rises to the surface, in those rare instances when you look at the night sky and feel not wonder, but recognition, as if you are not looking outward, as if you are looking home. What you are about to explore is not new. It is not a product of internet spirituality or social media trends. The idea that human souls carry an origin beyond this planet, that certain beings incarnate here from elsewhere, has roots in Sumerian cosmology, in the Vedic understanding of lokas or planes of existence, in the Egyptian reverence for Sirius as the source of divine intelligence, in Gnostic theology that described souls descending through spheres before entering bodies of flesh. The word starseed is modern. The concept is ancient, and the question it raises is this: if the soul is not created at the moment of birth, if consciousness predates the body that houses it, then what did your soul carry into this life? What pattern of origin, what frequency of knowing, what mode of being was imprinted before you ever drew your first breath? Tonight, we are not going to tell you who you are. We are going to help you remember. We will descend through 5 major starseed origin systems: Sirius, the Pleiades, Arcturus, Lyra, and Andromeda. We will draw from the mythological, the cosmological, and the psychological, and we will offer you a structured test, not of personality type, but of soul pattern. By the end, something may click into place, not as new information, as remembered truth. We begin with the oldest star in the human story.
Before we can speak of specific origins, we need to understand the framework beneath the concept. The idea that human souls originate beyond Earth, that consciousness does not arise spontaneously from matter but descends into it from higher dimensional planes, is not unique to any single tradition. In the Vedic cosmology of ancient India, the universe is mapped as a hierarchy of lokas, planes or realms of existence ranging from the gross material to the subtlest levels of pure consciousness. The soul in this model does not simply appear, it moves. It descends and ascends through realms according to its karmic trajectory and the lessons it must integrate. In Gnostic cosmology, preserved in texts like the Nag Hammadi library recovered from Egypt in 1945, the soul's descent is described in elaborate, almost architectural terms. Before entering a physical body, the soul passes through multiple spheres, each governed by a demiurgic power called an archon. Each sphere imprints the soul with particular characteristics. The soul arrives in human form carrying the residue of every level it has passed through. The Egyptian priesthood of antiquity held Sirius, the star they called Sopdet, as the origin point of divine intelligence transmitted to humanity. The annual rising of Sirius in the eastern sky before dawn marked the flooding of the Nile, which meant renewal of life. To the Egyptians, Sirius was not merely a celestial object, it was a conduit, a channel through which higher intelligence entered the world. Much later in the 20th century, the channel Lissa Royal and the researcher Brad Steiger began articulating the modern Starseed framework, the idea that souls from advanced civilizations beyond Earth choose to incarnate in human form during critical evolutionary periods. Their works drew from ancient mythology, channeled material, and extraterrestrial encounter testimony to suggest a specific typology. Not all starseeds are alike. Their origin determines their function, their temperament, and the particular wisdom they carry. This is the framework we are working within tonight. It is important to be clear about what we are doing and what we are not doing. We are not claiming this is literal astrophysics. We are not saying that your soul literally flew across the galaxy and entered a human body. We are working in the space where mythology, cosmology, depth psychology, and lived spiritual experience intersect. A space that Carl Jung, in his later work, Flying Saucers, a Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies, acknowledged as psychologically significant, regardless of literal truth. Jung observed that the UFO phenomenon and its associated imagery functioned as a modern mythology, a new symbolic language through which the collective unconscious was attempting to articulate something about human identity, cosmic origin, and evolutionary destiny. He did not dismiss it, he analyzed it. We follow the same approach. These origin systems function as archetypes, patterns of consciousness, feeling, and function that map onto human experience with startling precision. Whether your soul has literally traveled from Sirius or Lyra is a question we leave open. What is not open to question is that these archetypes describe real patterns in real human beings. The question is, which pattern is yours? To find out, we begin at the brightest fixed star in the night sky.
The Architects of Devotion.
Sirius rises before the sun. In ancient Egypt, this heliacal rising, the first appearance of Sirius above the eastern horizon just before dawn, was one of the most important astronomical events of the year. It signaled the beginning of the Nile's inundation, the beginning of life renewed. The priests of Egypt called the star Sopdet, and in later Greek usage, it became part of the constellation Canis Major, the greater dog, giving rise to the phrase dog days for the heat of summer when Sirius dominated the night sky. But to the Egyptians, Sirius was more than a seasonal marker. It was the stellar home of Isis, the great goddess of wisdom, magic, and resurrection. Texts from the Pyramid Age describe the soul of the deceased pharaoh ascending to Sirius, not metaphorically, but as a genuine cosmological destination. In the 20th century, a remarkable discovery deepened this mystery. The Dogon people of Mali, a tribe with no access to modern telescopes, possessed detailed astronomical knowledge about Sirius that Western science did not confirm until 1970. That it is a binary star system. They called the invisible companion star Digitaria and described it as a white dwarf of extraordinary density that completed an orbit around Sirius every 50 years. They claimed this knowledge had been given to them by amphibious beings from the Sirius system, beings they called the Nomo. Anthropologists Marcel Griol and Germaine Dieterlen documented this knowledge in the 1930s and 1940s. It remains one of the most debated mysteries in the archaeology of ancient knowledge. Whether or not that transmission was literal, the Sirian archetype it represents is unmistakable.
The Sirian Soul Pattern.
Sirian souls are not primarily intellectuals, though they are deeply intelligent. They are not primarily warriors, though they carry extraordinary inner strength. They are, at their core, devoted. Devotion is their defining frequency. When a Syrian soul loves a person, a mission, an ideal, a practice, that love does not waver. It does not evaporate when conditions change or when return is not immediate. Loyalty is not a choice for them. It is a nature. They are the person who shows up at 3 a.m. without being asked, the friend who still defends you after everyone else has moved on. This capacity for loyalty often makes Syrian souls appear serious, even reserved. They do not scatter their devotion. It flows toward what they have chosen, and once given, it is rarely withdrawn. They are drawn to ancient things, old structures, old wisdom, old rituals, not out of nostalgia, but out of recognition. Something in them responds to temples, to liturgical rhythm, to practices that have been sustained across centuries. They understand, intuitively, that what endures carries weight. They are not easily impressed by novelty. Syrian souls are often found in roles of sacred service, healing work, priesthood functions, teaching, ceremony. They carry the energy of the intermediary, the one who stands at the threshold between ordinary reality and something higher and makes passage possible for others. They are frequently highly attuned to animals, not in a casual way, but in a profound interspecies resonance. The Syrian lineage, across traditions, is connected to what some call the guardian of life function, a stewardship over other forms of being that extends beyond the human. There is often a profound stillness in Syrian souls, not passivity, stillness. They can remain present in crisis without fracturing. They are the calm center of environments that would otherwise spin into chaos. The shadow is inseparable from the gift. Because Syrian souls give so completely, they are vulnerable to a particular form of loss, the discovery that their devotion was not matched. They do not process betrayal quickly. They may remain in relationships or commitments long after those around them would have departed. The capacity for loyalty can become an inability to leave. They can also become rigid. Syrian souls prize what endures, which means they can resist necessary change. New frameworks, new ways of doing things, new spiritual paradigms, these can trigger something defensive in them. It takes real discernment for a Syrian soul to distinguish between honoring what is ancient and preserving what is simply old. There is also a tendency toward emotional depth that others cannot meet. Syrian souls feel deeply and steadily, and they may find that most human relationships skim the surface of what they are capable of. This produces a characteristic loneliness, not the loneliness of isolation, but of partial connection. You are present, others are present, but you are aware, quietly and consistently, that you are not fully met. Syrian indicators. Reflect, not just read. From childhood, did you form intense bonds with one or two people rather than many? Did you feel more comfortable with animals than with most humans? Have you been described as old, not in a derogatory way, but as someone who seemed to carry weight from elsewhere? Are you drawn to ancient symbolism, Isis mythology, or ceremonial spiritual practices without having been raised in them? Do you find yourself drawn toward healing arts, sacred service, or any role that places you between others and something higher and makes passage possible? Do you love fiercely and find it nearly impossible to stop, even when reason tells you to? Do you feel that the pace of the world is too shallow, that most conversations do not go deep enough, that you are waiting, constantly, for someone to meet you where you actually are? If these feel like descriptions rather than suggestions, hold that. We are not finished with the test. Now we descend further. from the oldest star in the human story to the constellation that, for thousands of years, has represented something different: tenderness, sorrow, and the search for beauty in an impermanent world. The Pleiades.
The emotional teachers.
The Pleiades are one of the most recognized star clusters in the history of human civilization. Every major ancient culture saw them, named them, built toward them. The Aboriginal Australians tracked their rising as an agricultural and ceremonial marker, associating them with the Seven Sisters and a mythic story of pursuit and longing. The Maori of New Zealand called them Matariki and marked their rising as the beginning of the new year. In ancient Japan, they were known as Subaru, a word meaning to govern or to gather. In ancient Greece, they were the daughters of Atlas and the sea nymph Pleione, seven sisters transformed into stars, placed in the sky by Zeus after they grieved themselves nearly to death following their father's punishment. Grief and beauty. The two are inseparable in the Pleiadian mythology. In modern Starseed literature, beginning with works like those of Barbara Marciniak's Bringers of the Dawn in the 1990s, which explicitly claimed to channel Pleiadian intelligence, and reinforced across a wide range of channeled material, the Pleiades are described as a civilization marked by exceptional emotional intelligence, artistry, healing capacity, and a deep investment in the emotional evolution of humanity. Whether or not you accept the channeling framework, the archetype it produces is coherent and recognizable.
The Pleiadian soul pattern.
Pleiadian souls feel everything, not as a figure of speech. They process reality emotionally before they process it intellectually, and their emotional attunement is so refined that it functions almost as a sensory organ. They pick up subtext in conversations that others miss entirely. They sense the mood of a room before a word is spoken. They know when someone is not okay, often before that person knows it themselves. This makes them extraordinary empaths and healers. It also makes ordinary life exhausting. Pleiadian souls are drawn to beauty with an intensity that borders on necessity. Not aesthetic preference, necessity. They need art, music, nature, poetry, connection. These are not luxuries, they are metabolic. Without beauty in their lives, Pleiadian souls begin to dim. They lose their color. Something in them withdraws. They are drawn to relationships with a kind of gravitational pull that they themselves do not always understand. Connection is central to their sense of meaning. They do not merely want to be loved, they want to be known. Deeply, specifically, precisely known. And because they carry such a refined awareness of others, they extend the same hope of being seen in return. When that hope is not met, and it rarely is met at the depth they require, the grief is real. This is the Pleiadian sorrow embedded in the myth. The sisters who grieved so deeply they were transformed into something unreachable. There is a grief pattern in Pleiadian souls that is not always tied to specific events. It is an ambient sense of loss, as if something beautiful is always slightly beyond reach. Pleiadian souls are often healers, artists, counselors, musicians, poets, teachers, and anyone who works at the level of emotional reality. They are drawn to the wounded, not to fix, to accompany. Their gift is presence, not prescription. They are often luminous in social settings, warm, magnetic, deeply interested in others. Yet they return home exhausted in a way that is difficult to explain. The world takes more from them than others realize because they are always giving something that costs them.
The shadow of the Pleiadian soul.
The gift and the wound are the same thing. Emotional depth without boundary becomes emotional dissolution. Pleiadian souls frequently struggle to know where they end and others begin. They absorb the emotional states of people around them and may carry grief, anxiety, or heaviness that is not theirs without being able to trace it to its actual source. Relationships can become sites of intensity that slide into dependency. Because connection is so central to their sense of self, the fear of its loss can drive them to remain in dynamics that diminish them. They may give too much,
endure too much, justify too much, because the alternative, which is the loneliness of disconnection, feels worse. They are also susceptible to what might be called beauty avoidance in reverse, a collapse into ugliness, whether in their environment, their self-care, or their emotional habits, as a kind of unconscious self-punishment for not achieving the depth of beauty they sense is possible. The evolution of the Pleiadian soul involves learning that depth of feeling is not the same as wisdom about feeling, that empathy without discernment becomes suffering without purpose, that beauty is not a destination you arrive at, it is a frequency you maintain.
Pleiadian indicators.
Did you feel others' emotions acutely as a child, sometimes without being able to distinguish them from your own? Have you been told you are too sensitive, and did that phrase feel like an accusation and a recognition? Are you drawn to music that makes you ache, to stories that end in loss, to art that holds sorrow without resolving it? Do you feel a persistent sense of longing you cannot quite locate the source of? Are your deepest relationships the axis around which your life turns? Do you find ordinary transactional interaction genuinely depleting? Have you always known in some quiet part of yourself that you are meant to help people feel less alone? Hold that knowing. We now move from the stars of grief and beauty into something colder, more precise, a frequency oriented not toward feeling, but to the architecture of possibility itself. Arcturus.
The technologists of consciousness.
Arcturus is not a gentle star. It is one of the brightest in the northern sky, a red giant located approximately 37 light-years from Earth, roughly 25 times the diameter of our Sun. Ancient navigators used it for celestial positioning. Its name derives from the Greek Arcturos, meaning guardian of the bear, from its position adjacent to Ursa Major. In the works of Edgar Cayce, the American mystic and clairvoyant, whose readings remain among the most extensively documented in 20th century esoteric literature, Arcturus appears with striking frequency. Cayce described it as the highest civilization in this galaxy, and as a way station through which souls pass in their evolutionary journey between different physical incarnations. He did not describe it as a home. He described it as a school, a place of advanced preparation. This framing is significant. Where Syrian cosmology emphasizes devotion and Egyptian priestly wisdom, and Pleiadian cosmology emphasizes emotional intelligence and healing, the Arcturian framework is oriented around something different: systems, mastery, the architecture of consciousness itself. In later channeled literature, including the work of Tom Kenyon and those within the Arcturian lineage tradition, Arcturian intelligence is described as among the most advanced in the known galaxy. Not primarily emotional or devotional, but technically sophisticated in ways that pertain to energy, healing technology, dimensional structure, and the mechanics of consciousness.
The Arcturian soul pattern.
Arcturian souls are problem solvers, but not of the ordinary variety. Their orientation is toward root causes. They are not interested in symptoms. They want to understand the underlying architecture of why something is the way it is, and then restructure it at the level where change actually becomes possible. This makes them extraordinary healers, particularly in modalities that work with energy, frequency, and systemic patterns rather than surface symptoms. They are frequently brilliant with systems of all kinds: mathematics, music theory, language structure, healing technology, sacred geometry, organizational design. Their minds naturally perceive the patterns beneath apparent complexity. What looks like chaos to others often resolves in the Arcturian field of perception into an elegant system that simply hasn't been understood yet. They tend toward precision in communication,
They do not use words loosely. They edit themselves. They are careful, sometimes to the point of frustration, about being misunderstood. This is not pedantry. It is an expression of the same impulse that drives their technical orientation. Accuracy matters because imprecision has consequences. Arcturian souls often feel most alive in solitude, not because they are antisocial, they can be warm, even devoted, but because solitude is where their deepest work happens. Their inner life is often far more rich and elaborate than anything visible to others. They may seem reserved, even cold to those who do not know them. To those who do know them, the depth is staggering. They are drawn to healing, particularly advanced, often misunderstood healing modalities. Sound healing, Reiki, acupuncture, bioenergetics, quantum approaches, shamanic technology. They sense, correctly, that reality is more malleable than consensus reality suggests, and they want to work at the level where that malleability becomes accessible. They often feel a strong sense of mission. Not all starseeds do. Some feel origin without necessarily feeling purpose. Arcturian souls tend to feel both. They came here to do something specific, and when they have not yet identified what that is, they carry a restlessness that nothing ordinary can resolve.
The shadow of the Arcturian soul.
Precision can become rigidity. The same impulse that drives Arcturian souls toward mastery can make it difficult for them to engage with processes that are inherently imprecise, which is to say, most human relationships. They may become impatient with emotional processing that does not resolve into clarity. They may analyze when they should simply feel. They may offer solutions when the person in front of them wanted only to be heard. Their precision, while a gift in technical contexts, can read as distance or emotional unavailability in intimate ones. There is also a risk of isolation. Arcturian souls often suspect that no one around them is operating at the same frequency, and they may be right. But this recognition, if not carefully navigated, can harden into superiority or withdrawal. The mission they feel does not excuse disconnection from the human beings around them. The evolution of the Arcturian soul involves learning that mastery without love is engineering, that the architecture of consciousness they came here to transmit can only be truly given through relationship.
Arcturian indicators.
Have you always had a sense of mission that you couldn't entirely articulate? A feeling that you came here to do something, even when you didn't know what it was? Do you think in systems, in structures, in patterns beneath patterns? Are you drawn to healing modalities that most people would consider unconventional or advanced? Do you prefer depth with one or two people to warmth across many? Is solitude not merely restorative for you, but essential? The place where you become most fully yourself? Do you find that you sense things about people's energetic states before you know anything about their history? Do you tend toward precision in speech, in thought, in practice, and does imprecision in others quietly frustrate you? Note what lands. Now, we move into a domain that will feel different from everything we have covered so far. Not service, not feeling, not technical mastery, something older than all of these. The oldest starseed lineage in the known system of origin lore. Lyra.
The first fire.
In the celestial sphere, Lyra is a small constellation. It contains only a handful of stars visible to the naked eye. And yet, within starseed cosmology, it holds a singular position. It is described as the original point of origin, the ancient cradle from which human-type consciousness first emerged in this region of the galaxy.
The mythology is this. Long before the civilizations of Sirius, the Pleiades, or Arcturus developed, there existed in the Lyran system a people of extraordinary independence, physical vitality, and creative force. They were explorers, individualists, builders of civilizations from raw material, not through inheritance or transmission, but through the force of their own will brought into direct contact with matter. The story of Lyra in the traditions of Greek mythology is the story of Orpheus, the musician whose playing was so extraordinary that it moved stones, rivers, and the god of the underworld himself. His lyre was placed in the sky after his death. But even before Orpheus, the constellation Lyra was associated with divine music, the ordering of chaos through creative force. In the Starseed framework articulated across multiple channeled sources, including through Barbara Marshaniak's Pleiadian material and through the work of researchers like Lissa Royal in The Prism of Lyra, the Lyran lineage is understood as the most ancient available to souls in this galactic region and the most deeply embedded in physical embodied experience.
The Lyran soul pattern. Lyran souls are alive in a way that is difficult to describe without using the word fire. They have a relationship to physical existence that is fundamentally different from other starseed lineages. Where Pleiadian souls experience the body as a vehicle for feeling and connection, and Arcturian souls approach physical reality as a domain to be understood and refined, Lyran souls are fully, viscerally here. They love the physical world, its textures, its tastes, its sensations, its challenges. They are not trying to transcend embodiment, they are trying to master it. This produces people who are extraordinarily capable in the physical domain. They may be athletes, builders, chefs, martial artists, farmers, craftspeople, anyone who works with direct material reality using the body and will. They are not afraid of hard work. Often, they love it. There is something deeply satisfying to a Lyran soul about the encounter between will and matter, about making something that did not exist before, from raw material through sustained effort. They tend towards strong independence. Lyran souls resist being told what to do, not out of ego, but from something genuine and constitutional. They need autonomy the way others need air. Put them in a structure that micromanages, they will leave it. Ask them to defer to authority that has not earned their respect, they will not. It can appear as stubbornness or rebellion. It is, at its root, an ancient orientation towards self-governance. They are natural leaders, but not in the hierarchical sense. They lead by going first, by demonstrating, by doing, by being willing to enter territory others hesitate at. Others follow because they trust the Lyran soul's instinct, not because they have been commanded to. There is a quality of vitality in them that draws others close. They are often physically magnetic, and their humor is real, earthy, direct, not precious. They enjoy life in a way that can seem almost paradoxical for a being with cosmic origins. The shadow of the Lyran soul.
The fire that animates can also consume. Lyran souls can be fierce to the point of aggression. Their independence can make genuine collaboration difficult. They may interpret any external structure as a threat to be overcome, even when structure is, in a given situation, genuinely useful. They may confuse freedom with the refusal of all constraint. Their love of the physical world can pull them away from the spiritual dimensions that their soul also carries. They may spend decades in full engagement with material life, building, achieving, experiencing, and suddenly find themselves in a kind of spiritual emergency, as if the inner dimension they have been neglecting has finally sent an ultimatum. They can also struggle with what might be called the impatience of fire. They want what they want it now, and they are not naturally inclined towards processes that require sustained waiting. This makes certain spiritual paths genuinely difficult for them. The evolution of the Lyran soul involves learning that fire contained is more powerful than fire scattered, that the force that built civilizations can also build inner worlds, that their extraordinary capacity for presence in the physical does not preclude presence in the invisible.
Indicators of Lyra. Do you feel most fully alive when your body is engaged? Through physical challenge, through making, through direct encounter with material reality? Do you have a history of resisting authority that felt illegitimate to you, even from a young age? Is your humor physical, direct, without artifice? Do you find most spiritual conversation overly precious or disconnected from real life? Have you built something? A company, a family, a body of work, a craft from scratch, driven by the sheer force of your own will? Do you have a temper that flares fast and clears fast without lingering? Do you feel underneath everything an immense love for being here, for the fact of physical existence, even when it is painful? Hold that. The recognition of Lyra is often visceral. It lives in the gut, not the mind. Now we arrive at the final and perhaps most mysterious of the 5 origin systems, the one least embedded in ancient mythology, the one that describes something rarer and more difficult to hold: Andromeda.
The ones who watch from outside.
The Andromeda Galaxy is not a star system within the Milky Way. It is our nearest galactic neighbor, a spiral galaxy approximately 2.537 million light-years from Earth. When you look at it on a dark night, the light entering your eyes left its source 2.5 million years ago. In an almost literal sense, looking at Andromeda is looking at deep time. And within Starseed cosmology, this distance is significant. Andromedan souls are not described as coming from a nearby stellar neighborhood. They are described as coming from outside, from a fundamentally different galaxy, a different order of civilization, a different level of energetic sophistication. This extragalactic origin produces, in Starseed frameworks, the most freedom-oriented of all origin types. The Andromedan lineage appears in the work of Alex Collier, a contactee who described receiving transmissions from beings he identified as Andromedan, tall, blue-skinned, and apparently deeply invested in the concept of universal freedom as a fundamental principle, not a political ideal. The concept at the center of Andromedan consciousness, as described across multiple traditions, is this: freedom from all forms of control, including the subtle ones, including the ones that masquerade as help.
The Andromedan soul pattern.
Andromedan souls carry a quality that is difficult to name precisely, but easy to recognize once encountered: a kind of radical presence without attachment. They are deeply aware, perceptive, subtle, often intellectually brilliant, but they hold their perception differently from Arcturian or cherubic patterns. Where an Arcturian mind organizes perception into systems, the Andromedan mind holds it open. They are extraordinarily comfortable with paradox, with ambiguity, with not knowing. They do not require resolution. They are often described by others as different, not strange, different. There is a quality in their eyes, in their attention, in the way they listen that marks them as not quite operating within the ordinary consensus. They seem to be watching from a vantage point slightly wider than the room they are in. Andromedan souls are the most freedom-oriented of any starseed type. This is not merely a preference, it is a constitutional requirement. Any structure, relationship, belief system, or identity that constrains their essential nature will eventually be shed, sometimes gracefully, sometimes catastrophically. They cannot be held in a form that does not fit them. This is not selfishness, it is an orientation so fundamental that resisting it causes a kind of soul-level atrophy. They often feel a deep ambivalence about being here at all. Not depression, ambivalence. A quality of holding the question of incarnation lightly, as if they have not fully decided whether to invest in the whole project. This can make them appear detached, even emotionally unavailable. The truth is more nuanced. They are present, acutely so, but they are present without need. They do not require the situation to be any particular way. They tend toward unconventional lives, not because they are trying to be interesting, but because conventional structures simply do not fit the shape of their consciousness. They may have lived in multiple countries, held dozens of jobs, moved in and out of communities, spiritual traditions, and relationship structures with a fluidity that bewilders those around them. They often carry, quietly, a profound love for humanity, not sentimentalized, not emotional, but vast and clear and real. They see the potential in the species in a way that is almost geological in its patience. They are not disappointed by human limitation, they simply see further.
The shadow of the Andromedan soul.
Shed freedom without anchor becomes drift. Andromedan souls are at risk of a particular kind of dissolution. The accumulated freedom becomes weightlessness. They have shed so many structures that nothing holds them to anything. Life becomes a sequence of experiences without depth of commitment, and the breadth of their freedom paradoxically produces a kind of emptiness. Their detachment, which is genuinely not the same as coldness, can be received as coldness. Relationships may feel one-sided to partners who need more emotional responsiveness. The Andromedan soul may not even realize what is being withheld, because what they offer, vast, patient, non-attached love, is real. It simply does not look like what most people recognize as love. There is also a risk of bypassing. Because Andromedan souls hold reality lightly, they can use that lightness to avoid genuine encounters with pain, grief, or accountability. Non-attachment is a genuine quality in them, but it can become a sophisticated spiritual avoidance if not examined with honesty. The evolution of the Andromedan soul involves learning that commitment is not the same as cage, that depth requires staying, that their extraordinary freedom is only meaningful when brought into contact with something that genuinely matters to them, and then choosing to remain in that contact long enough for something real to be built.
Andromedan indicators.
Have you always felt outside? Not rejected, but outside, as if you observe human life from a slight distance that you did not create and cannot quite close. Do others describe you as different in a way that carries both admiration and bewilderment? Is freedom, not comfort, not security, but freedom the value you refuse to compromise under any circumstances? Have you moved through many different lives, communities, or belief systems, not because of instability, but because of genuine breadth of experience? Do you feel a kind of patient love for humanity, not dependent on humanity meeting you where you are? Do you understand loneliness not as absence of others, but as an orientation, a quality you carry even in full rooms? Is ambiguity comfortable to you, not as something to be resolved, but as the natural texture of reality? Sit with that.
Reading the pattern of your soul.
We have now descended through 5 origin systems. Before we synthesize, we need to move from recognition to discernment. A test of soul origin is not a personality inventory. It does not measure preferences, it measures patterns. Specifically, the patterns that were present before you were shaped by your family, your culture, your wounds, your ambitions. To read your pattern accurately, we need to move through 4 layers of inquiry.
Layer 1. The wound.
Every starseed origin carries a characteristic wound, not a personal wound from this life, but an archetypal pressure point that existed before this life began. The Syrian wound is abandonment in devotion, loving completely and not being returned to. The Pleiadian wound is longing, the sense that beauty and depth are always slightly beyond reach. The Arcturian wound is isolation in knowing, being aware of things others are not ready for, and carrying that awareness alone. The Lyran wound is the tension between fire and belonging,
the force of individuality against the need for community. The Andromedan wound is the ambivalence of incarnation itself, never being fully certain this world is where they belong. Ask yourself, which of these does not merely describe a feeling you have had, but describes a feeling you return to? A wound that heals and reopens, not because of specific events, but because it is structural.
Layer 2. The gift that costs.
Every origin's deepest gift is also its deepest cost. Syrian souls give devotion and pay in loneliness when it is not met. Pleiadian souls give empathy and pay in emotional depletion. Arcturian souls give precision and mastery and pay in disconnection. Lyran souls give vitality and will and pay in impatience and the occasional scorched earth. Andromedan souls give freedom and vast perspective and pay in weightlessness and the difficulty of staying. Which of these describes a give and take you recognize in your own life, not occasionally, but consistently?
Layer 3. The childhood signal.
Origin leaves fingerprints early, before ego construction, before social training. Did you form one or two intense bonds rather than many, and did you remain loyal to those bonds long past when others would have moved on? Syrian. Did you cry easily, feel others' pain as your own, need beauty the way you needed food? Pleiadian. Did you build elaborate inner worlds, understand complex systems intuitively, feel impatient with learning that moved at other people's pace? Arcturian. Were you physically bold, independent to the point of stubbornness, drawn to making and building things with your hands? Lyran. Did you feel like you were observing childhood rather than simply living it, as if something in you was watching the whole drama from a vantage point slightly wider than the room? Andromedan. Now, bring your 4 answers together. In most cases, they will point toward a single origin or a primary with a secondary influence. Many souls carry a blend, a primary origin frequency and a secondary one that provides nuance. This is not unusual. The Gnostic cosmology of the soul's descent suggested that consciousness acquires qualities at each sphere it passes through. You may carry a Pleiadian heart with an Arcturian mind, a Lyran body with an Andromedan field of perception. What matters is finding the primary frequency.
The deeper question beneath the origin. We need to confront a question that lies underneath all of this. Even if everything we have explored tonight is precisely accurate, even if your soul does carry a specific origin frequency, a particular pattern from Sirius or Lyra or Andromeda, what does that change? It would be easy to turn Starseed identity into another layer of self-conception, another story about why you are the way you are, why ordinary life doesn't fit, why you feel different. A spiritual explanation for distance from the world, rather than a map toward deeper engagement with it. This would be a profound misuse. In Vedic philosophy, the concept of dharma, often translated as duty or purpose, carries a specific implication. Your function in this world is determined by your nature. You do not choose dharma, you discover it by becoming fully what you are. The Bhagavad Gita, in Chapter 2, describes the soul as that which does not die when the body dies, but it does not stop there. The same passage across chapters 3 and 4 moves into the question of action, of what the soul does while in the body. Arjuna is not told to identify his divine origin and use it as an excuse for inaction. He is told to act from that origin in service of something larger than his own comfort. This is the real meaning of Starseed origin, not a category, a function. The reason Syrian souls carry such extraordinary devotion is because devotion is what this world needs, transmitted through specific, irreplaceable human lives. The reason Pleiadian souls carry such emotional depth is because the world's emotional evolution requires guides who have already descended into those depths and can show others there is a way through. The reason Arcturian souls carry such technical precision is because consciousness has structures that most cannot perceive, and those structures need tenders. The reason Lyran souls carry fire is because certain things in this world only change when someone with the force of will and the love of matter refuses to accept the existing limitation. The reason Andromedan souls carry vast freedom is because humanity needs to know what it looks like to live without the invisible cages it has normalized. Origin is not an explanation for absence, it is a call to presence. The Sufi poet Rumi in the Masnavi opens with the image of the reed flute crying for its origin, for the reed bed from which it was cut. The cry is real. The longing is real, but the reed is not crying from a distance, it is crying while playing. The separation from origin is precisely what produces the music. Your longing for elsewhere is real, your sense of not belonging here is real, but you are here, playing, whether or not you know it yet. The question is not, where did I come from? The question is, what did I bring?
You came here with something. Not a memory you can access through ordinary recollection, not a skill you learned in this life. Something older, a frequency, a function, a mode of being that this world requires precisely because it does not naturally arise here. Syrian souls anchor devotion in an age that mistakes convenience for connection. Pleiadian souls carry grief and beauty in a world that is addicted to the numbing of both. Arcturian souls hold the architecture of consciousness while collective attention spans shrink. Lyran souls bring the fire of will and embodiment to a world increasingly disembodied. Andromedan souls carry freedom and perspective into every structure that has forgotten what it was built for. None of these functions are impressive from the outside. Most of them happen quietly, in conversations, in decisions, in the way you enter a room, or the way you remain when everyone else has left. You may never know exactly where your soul comes from. The traditions we have drawn on tonight, Vedic, Gnostic, Egyptian, Hermetic, mythological, all point toward the same truth from different angles, that consciousness has depth, that depth has origin, and that origin carries function. But they do not provide proof in the scientific sense. They provide resonance in the experiential sense. Resonance is not nothing. It is, in fact, how the deepest things are recognized. So we leave you not with certainty, but with a more honest question than the one we started with. Not, where does your soul come from? But, now that you have a language for what you have always carried, what will you do with it? That question has no answer that can be given from outside you, only the one you find yourself living.